on Tuesday, March 23rd at 4 p.m. I am calling the meeting to order. And now for the script. We are now using Zoom webinars for meetings, which allows for public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their first and last names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will be joining in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. YouTube chat is no longer enabled and all questions should be directed to the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Nantucket Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Joe Grouse.
Aye.
Peter McEachern.
Here.
Peter Schaefer.
Aye.
Stephen Morey.
Here.
Jill Beebe.
Here.
Joanna Roche.
Here.
Chris Kowacki.
Aye.
And we are missing George. Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. And we'll start with Libby Gibson.
Present.
Thank you. Rick Sears.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Let's see, please know that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along with the posted agenda. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, and before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite members of the Finance Committee to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you. And if you want to engage with other members, please do so through me. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Okay. May I have an approval of the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Joe?
Aye.
Peter McEachern?
Aye.
Peter Schaefer?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Thank you. Let me just see if George is on page 2. George, are you on page 2? No, he's not. Okay. Back to the, okay, thank you. And now we have meeting minutes. Show of hands if you had time to go through them and are ready to approve them in bulk. I see a no shaking of head on Joanna, so we will do that, and from Jill as well, and from Joe as well. Okay, so with the shaking of heads no, we will postpone that to Thursday, but let's please be ready for them on Thursday so we can get them off our plate. We have 9 or 10, I lose count, Rick, how many we have open. I think 10, Rick?
End of the day, there should hopefully be the 10th one will be added.
Okay, all right, so we'll do that on Thursday. Thank you. I'm going to skip over, well, no, I'll ask, any committee reports that need to be reported on? No hands raised? Okay, thank you. At this moment, Joe, I think you have to recuse and become a member of the public.
I agree. I'm recusing myself from discussion and voting on these 4 articles.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so Brian, I'm going to be turning it over to you. So just for everyone who's on this meeting today, this meeting is for FinCom's deliberation and discussion of these 4 articles. As in when we have questions of people who are on this call, we will call on you, but otherwise there will be no public comment today. We've had plenty of public input up till now, and unless we're missing information that we need to ask you for specifically, the intent of this meeting today is to be able to do our deliberations and come to motions if possible. So Brian, I'm going to first turn it over to you for Article 23, Select Board, the Appropriation Affordable Housing Trust, the 475K. And
Thank you,
thank you.
Madam Chair. As you know, at the Select Board meeting, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, Town Administration came up with a modified proposal, whereas we would dedicate $2 million through the raise and appropriate mechanism into both Articles 8 and Article 10. The expectation is that we will put the 475, it's actually going to be $375,000 into the operating budget, and we would increase the amount going into Article 10 by that $100,000 because that is for actual repairs and maintenance, and we would want that money available in subsequent years. If Tucker would like, I can have Tucker take you through the fiscal 22 appropriations if you would like, Madam Chair, as part of this discussion. What we would do is we would recommend that Article 23 be moved not to adopt, and the $2 million would be put through Article 8. There is some salary that has been proposed, and I believe all of the members of FinCom did get the information from the through Rick from the Affordable Housing Trust. The 375 would be put into both personnel and operating expenses. The 1,625,000 would be put in Article 10 as a capital article. The Affordable Housing Trust at their meeting did endorse a plan that would take $600,000 of that money and commit it to debt service to authorize a borrowing. We have worked with Hilltop Securities to discuss what level of borrowing we would be able to get to with that number. Given that these projects have varying components and a portion of most of the affordable housing projects have carried a taxable component, we've settled on a borrowing authorization of $6.5 million that would allow the Affordable Housing Trust to execute a portion of the plan that was in the presentations or the information that was sent to you by the housing director. So at this point, Madam Chair, I think I would let Tucker take you through that spreadsheet if you think that that's a good idea, and then I'm certainly available to answer any questions after he's done relative to how town administration plans to handle that $2 million appropriation.
Thank you, Brian. And yes, Tucker, please, if you would.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So looking at the page entitled FY22 Budget Discussion Document Anticipated Needs, just starting from the top, you will see represented the anticipated asks from Housing Nantucket and Habitat for Humanity based on their planned production schedule for this coming fiscal year, which would be 2 units apiece. Typically the subsidy that we would provide. Below that is the closing cost assistance up to 175% of area median income. That program has been in place for approximately 5 years, and during the course of that time, we have expended on average about that figure. So we're plugging in sort of a status quo number. The repair and maintenance program is new. It is something that was brought up during the CPC process last fall, and I think it's something that is important to have in our quiver as the housing product is aging around the island. The consulting and professional services, that would cover a variety of different things if we look at what we have spent historically and also what we have planned. The types of things included there would be general legal expense not associated with a particular transaction. That might be on the order of roughly 17,000 if we're looking back over 2020. We are including design concept work, much like we did in the case of the old fire station site a couple years ago. That was approximately $10,000 to have a firm take a look at the potential there. Again, it wasn't a design that would go into a project cost. It was more of a conceptual exercise. There are activities such as appraisal, environmental. We had planned prior to COVID to bring in a speaker on the housing topic in association with the community forum that we wanted to host. That would be another 10,000. Probably the two biggest things included in this figure are related to further data work in terms of refined definition of need, and as well program development around the shared equity program. And that I'll talk about a little bit more in conjunction with the $6.5 million that Brian mentioned a few moments ago. So similarly, in the marketing, public outreach, advertising line, we have included, the trust is very eager to promote more of the work that it is doing and share even in an even greater way what is happening around housing. That's some of the feedback actually that has been heard during the course of the HPP process. So included there would be allocations toward advertising, marketing, graphic development, 2 videos that the trust would like to do, as well as having certain events broadcast on NCTV. Education, training, travel, 20,000 figure is consistent with past expenditures. Then the next line item relates to the administrative assistant that would serve both housing and real estate offices. And then we have incorporated an allocation toward office space. There has been some discussion over the course of the last year of where certain town offices will reside. And so we have included that here as a placeholder. Brian spoke to the debt service item there. The safe harbor maintenance section next really is relating to Article 24. So I don't know if we want to get into this at this juncture, but really that $7.5 million is toward anticipated subsidy for the development at 135, 137 Orange Street. And then the bottom block, other projects, programs, it reflects $7.5 million here, but again, in consultation with the finance director, that figure would look more like $6.5 million as part of Article 10. And that would be in furtherance of the trust's desire to do a pilot program for shared equity or down payment assistance for year-rounders to acquire existing homes and not necessarily have them have an income restriction on them that would allow them to be included on the SHI list, but it would have a restriction that would keep it in the year-round family. And so based on some early consultant work um, that with a well-regarded fellow, I can get into that more if necessary. But we're working with roughly 300,000 per house as a figure, and therefore the 6.5 million would allow us to do approximately 20 homes for year-rounders. And that is, as I mentioned, up in the operations part, the consulting work as part of the consulting and professional services with regard to this program is, working with this consultant in much greater depth in terms of the development of this program. There are a number of programs like this around the country, so we're not looking to reinvent the wheel, but through the course of what we've done so far, it's clear that Nantucket is a little different than most other places. So I will end there for now.
Thank you, Tucker. Questions from the Finance Committee? Brian, I'll have to ask you to stop sharing because otherwise I can't see people. Thank you for raising their hands. FinCom, Chris, you're up first.
Yeah, the maintenance of the buildings, what buildings is that? Are those grants made to Habitat and others to maintain their buildings, or were we talking about buildings that the trust is responsible for?
At this juncture, it would be the Habitat Housing Nantucket rental product.
So you would add maintenance grants on to any kind of development grant process you have?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, I'm going to have to wait till we go through all the Finance Committee because you're a member of the public. Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you. Stephen?
This, trying to understand, this debt service, this $600,000 figure, that is exclusively for this shared equity down payment assistance pilot program?
Yes.
Okay. Is that, I heard about the down payment assistance program for the first time maybe 45 days ago. I'm sure that the conversations have been going on much longer than that, but $7.5 million is a lot of money for a program that hasn't been talked about widely and publicly. Has there been a lot of public discussion about this, and as this program, how it relates to unit creation, for instance, in the list of priorities for housing?
So this is a program that the trust has talked about in various forms for a while, and we've certainly heard from the public during the course of the HPP process with our consultants that a program like this is one of the missing elements of addressing the year-round housing need here. I know that the committee is aware of all the efforts that are geared toward rental creation and meeting the 10% SHI requirement. This program gets at some of the, well, one, it gets at an ownership opportunity, and two, it gets at maybe some income levels that are not as deeply served by the rental program.
Okay, so to my question, has this been talked about publicly a lot? I mean, we used to talk for a long time about any appropriation for affordable housing. $7.5 million is a lot of money in relation to the many meetings that we discussed the $10 million 2 years ago. And it seems to me that this is just being added now. I don't remember this being a discussion even when we talked 2 weeks ago. Am I incorrect about that?
Well, this was certainly around 2 weeks ago, but I would agree that
Where was this $600,000 2 weeks ago? Which article was that in?
well, it wasn't, is the point.
So then it wasn't around 2 weeks ago.
It was, well,
I understand the idea of equity sharing was around 2 weeks ago,
the
but it
difference,
wasn't being put forth to be funded this year.
the difference between 2 weeks ago and now is, yes, that it's been put forward to establish a more significant budget toward the housing effort. And so this is something that's been on the list in terms of a program the trust would like to implement for a while, but it was not previously included in the proposed budget for this year.
Okay, so has there been a vote of the Housing Trust members to say that this is more important than some housing creation initiatives that I'm looking at on this sheet that was shared with us a week ago?
And Tucker, before you answer, I'm actually going to ask Brooke Moore to, as the vice chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, to weigh in with this and help clarify this topic for us. So Brooke, if you wouldn't mind jumping in, please.
Not at all. I would say in direct answer to, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Maury's question, that there has not actually been a vote on funding a shared equity program in an official sense. However, the conversation and dialogue at the Affordable Housing Trust for a long time has been about adding a shared equity program as the missing piece of the puzzle. We are driven to a large degree by the 10% requirement of Chapter 40B, and frankly, the shift in the budget this year, sort of late in the game, has afforded us an opportunity to prioritize this shared equity program that we've been working up the details of for quite some time now. So timing obviously is a little different this year on a lot of things in terms of how the budgets and these articles have been put together. So I would argue that the trust is committed to maintaining safe harbor on a steady basis through the funding that you see in the safe harbor maintenance line in the document that Tucker was walking through before, and the anticipated needs to do so. I think that we are excited at the commitment of town administration to funding the trust and this level and affording us the opportunity to begin addressing this missing need that we haven't even dared to hope, given the way financing of the trust has gone in the past.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense. Madam Chair, may I
Please.
continue?
Go ahead,
Thanks.
Stephen. Thank you.
So, Brooke, thank you. I had a question for you anyway, and I'll get to it in just a second. But you said that the trust has been working on the details of this program for quite some time. Where are those details so we can review what are the parameters for this program?
So the way a program like this would be set up has different, you can plug in things different ways, right? And so the final development of this program would go through a detailed analysis of the different options for how to do it. So you can do it as a subsidy, you can do it as a community land trust with a land lease model, you can do it, you can set your resale price in different ways, the calculation for a resale price. So it's a complex formula, and we know how to put it together. It's really a matter of going through the options and choosing how it's best going to work with the help of the consultant. And we know there's a framework out there that we can choose from, and the best model for Nantucket will be forthcoming. But again, it can't be done
before voters are going to be asked to appropriate this money. I'm guessing the answer is no.
Maybe not in final form, but certainly in more detail.
Okay, and what date will that happen? Before this committee has to make its motion?
If that's today, the answer would be no.
Well, if we could put this vote off for a week, would the answer be we could get a?
No, we would not have that framework completely completed within a week. Definitely not.
Okay, how about 2 weeks? When
I'm
will
good.
information be available?
I don't have a date for you.
Tucker?
Yeah, so Rick Jacobus is the consultant. He is preparing the final report right now on which would be the basis for determining the decisions that Brooke was speaking about. So, that probably would be available in a couple of weeks, but it's not necessarily going to have answered every question that would go into the program.
So I remember spending a lot of time, a lot of committee time and a lot of personal time trying to figure out how we were going to spend $10 million in the Neighborhood First program. And most people on this call were involved in those discussions, and we had worked out within a pretty narrow scope how those funds were going to be used. How they were used was different from those discussions. And now here we are asking for a substantial sum of money, and we have even less detail about how that money is going to be spent. How can we go to town meeting and say we have a pretty good idea and there's a lot of frameworks out there. We don't know which one we're going to use, but it's going to be good. How do we do that? I mean, people are hurting out there. People are really hurting in their businesses and in their private lives. And housing initiatives are good ideas, but they need forethought and they need planning. And we need to tell people what they're getting for their money.
So
And if it isn't ready to go, let's not rush it through at the last minute, and let's put it on the table for next year.
Madam
ahead.
Chair, through you,
Yes, please go ahead, Brooke.
people are hurting out there. I absolutely agree with you. People are hurting because they don't have housing. They're being made homeless. They can't buy homes. And as a community, we have kicked the can down the road for decades. And I am finally.
Not in the last 5 years. You know, I've heard that characterization a number of times. This committee and this town and this community through town meeting has appropriated millions of dollars just in the last couple of years. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. This isn't like the first time we're hearing about housing. You know, but what we're talking about is a very specific program that hasn't been specifically defined. And I think it's inappropriate.
So the Neighborhood First program, which was 3 times the funds that we're talking about, had
This committee appropriated $10 million.
I'm sorry, should I?
This committee appropriated $10 million, which is
Yes.
33% more than what we're talking about.
And town meeting or the select board upped that amount and town meeting approved that amount, which I think is part of your point is how can town meeting approve something that isn't totally defined? And I completely agree that we need greater definition by the time that we get to town meeting. But to be blunt, the funding that would enable this program wasn't on the table 2 weeks ago. And now it's a possibility. So we, the trust is fully prepared to hustle to pull the details together. And as Brooke outlined, the groundwork is there. But we're not in a position to give you today, all the details of it, much as we would like to be able to.
Okay, thank you, Tucker. I have to say I share Stephen's concerns that we are asking to appropriate money and borrow money without having a plan. I clearly remember the ATM 2019 where David Worth stood up and said, you know, I've got this great idea, bank, please give me $20 million and I'll get back to you with details. And I think that prudent financial responsibility looks after, here's a solid plan, and here's you know, maybe a couple options we can consider as we implement our plan. And this has the buy-in of the majority of the voters. And this does feel to me like we're trying to rush this through as well. So Jill, your hand is up.
I think also to that point, this, I keep coming back to this about this several years ago, the article. I wasn't on the finance committee then, so I didn't sit through all those meetings. That article said that you were going to buy existing properties, and that is how it was sold. And so my overarching concern is that if we give you money for a program, you're not quite sure how it's going to work now, then how are you going to sell it at town meeting? And then what if you turn around and come up with a different plan because all of a sudden the plan Toby put forward was too expensive? So it's one of my, I keep going back to that. What did the voters think that they were voting for and what actually happened?
Chris? Thank you, Jill. Chris?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. I guess I misunderstood the select board meeting where the discussion of the appropriation Article 10 was made, because I thought that was in lieu of a positive recommendation Article 24, and that would fund a partial set of the priorities in Article 24 and wasn't intended to be another bite at the apple for a whole new sections of things that aren't contemplated in the myriad of affordable housing articles that we have in consideration in front of us. I guess I missed that.
Libby, I'll ask you to actually weigh in on that, being the person at every select board.
I would, I'm going to put it back on Brian, but I would say that this has evolved since we initially made our recommendation to the board for the operational money, but we had retained the $7.5 million override. And I think that in discussing things through Tucker, I'm not privy or aware of all of the exact details of the down payment assistance program. I know that it's been talked about for quite a while. And I think Brian and I were trying to find a way where there could be some leeway as to borrowing. And this is a recommendation of ours. This is obviously, it's being discussed by you all and it will have your final say in the motion. And come on in. And anyway, it was a way for us to provide more leeway. Brian, do you want to add to that?
Absolutely. So when we came up with the $2 million number, which was essentially another $1.5 million to work through all of this, the question was asked, could the trust commit any portion of that to a borrowing article, which would potentially advance some of their initiatives and goals in a way much like we authorized the $20 million, okay? And so the trust settled on approximately $600,000 that they thought out of the $1.5 million commitment that we could make annually for these types of projects, that they were comfortable with $600,000 being used to fund a debt service initiative. So we looked at what we would be able to borrow to do that. One thing that I certainly want to make, and I've said this numerous times to the finance committee, so it's not something that you haven't heard from me. The authorization to borrow doesn't ensure that we will ever borrow $1 of this money. It simply grants us the ability to, if everybody upon development of a program says, this is a really great idea, we should move forward, and here's the mechanism to do it. The authorization doesn't obligate me to borrow anything, and so the mere granting of the authorization would allow us to move forward, but it doesn't mean that they have to town meeting that I go out into the market and borrow $6.5 million for anything, because as Tucker and Brooke will tell you, they go through a lot of hoops to get to the authorization point for any of the money that's already been previously authorized before we borrowed it. So I certainly understand where members of the FinCom are coming from, but what we've been trying to do really is look at how do we, with the available funding that the town can commit and get the right now and get the and with that commitment, what is the way to address as many of the needs as we possibly can in a way that makes sense? And the Affordable Housing Trust said if we committed $600,000 to debt service annually out of this appropriation, what would it be able to do for us? So this is kind of, this from my perspective is, this is what it would do. And the trust has come up with a program that may or may not, that may be what they want to do or not fully vetted yet. But it's all been part of the discussion in one way, shape, or form. From my perspective in all the conversations that I've ever had with them.
Joanna? And then Peter.
You know what? I agree with Brian. This is not the first time that we have heard of a down payment assistance program. I've been on this committee for 5 years. It's not the first time we've heard of this. We know that the closing cost assistance program has been one of the most successful things that has been implemented in trying to help with the housing crisis. I feel like we need to be flexible in our approach in terms of trying different things and looking at different ways to solve this problem. This business about the ATM meeting where we passed the $20 million. Yes, it's correct that this committee recommended $10 million. But this business about, and I think people have gotten stuck on this idea, I think the goal was to purchase single family homes in these neighborhoods. But you know, there's been so many reasons why that wasn't going to actually ever work. And again, so how much money of that $20 million have we spent, right? What is the exact number?
All of it.
All of it.
All of it.
All of $20 million.
Yes.
It's gone.
And that's from the purchase of the Orange Street property?
Yeah, would you like me to detail, Madam Chair?
Yes, could you?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
I think it would be good.
I was just reminding Joanna has to go through me. Thank you, Joanna. Yes, please, Brooke.
Okay.
Protocol, people, protocol.
I want to make sure I have the list. Is the list in the packet, Tucker, just to make sure I don't miss anything?
It is in the packet.
Yeah. Okay. So we've spent $3.7 million to acquire the 2 lots at Orange Street, which are lined up to be the next period of safe harbor after the Six Fairgrounds Tacoma Green project. 2 years of safe harbor expires. We spent $10.35 million as a combination of a grant to Housing Nantucket to acquire the property at 31 Fairgrounds Road and a 50-year mortgage of $6.75 million, which they will use to construct the project in the next 18 months. And then they will repay the trust the $6.75 million. We've also committed to acquire property at Vesper Lane from UMass at $2.8 million. We've also utilized the strategy that Mr. Maury added to the language of the Neighborhood First article, or recommended adding, which was a covenant buy down or a deed restriction buy down element of that article, which we are using to accelerate the production of units at Richmond Development, where we will get an additional 6 affordable units. We will get 6 units that would have been at 80% AMI will be at 50%. And we will get an additional 6 units at 110% AMI, and we will be accelerating the construction of all of those units by more than 1 year. So people will actually get roofs over their heads in a faster time frame. And the bulk of that is also a loan that will be repaid. And so the cost per unit of those additional 6 unit buy downs is about $100,000 a unit, which on the scale of Nantucket real estate is an incredibly effective use of the funds. What am I missing, Tucker? We've also funded some units at Habitat and Housing Nantucket with that are all SHI listed through the combination of the CPC borrowing of $5 million and the Neighborhood First, so $20 million. Have I missed anything, Tucker?
Madam Chair, is that okay?
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair.
I know, few people, disciplined people,
Sorry.
disciplined. Tucker, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think you covered it well there, Brooke. And I just wanted to thank Brian for bringing up that very important point that none of the monies that are expended by the trust that are in excess of $100,000 can be expended by the trust without select board approval as well. So there is a built-in check and balance, and no program, would go forward without further public vetting and ultimately the approval of those two boards.
Peter Schaefer, you had a question?
Well, I think what Stephen said makes a lot of sense. However, 2 years ago it did. Last year, I think they rectified it by what they did in terms of purchases and plans, et cetera. We did allocate 20 million or 25 million without any real plans. And now they're asking for 7.5 million without any real plans. I don't see where, I think this is, a more conservative view than they had 2 years ago. So, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't know.
Thank you, Peter. Chris is next, Stephen, and then I'll come back to you.
So this is starting to sound a little bit to me like a sort of an ask for a bunch of unrestricted dollars. That's what we would call it in the philanthropy world, to sort of do with, as sort of best thought to do with. It feels something akin to what was the approach for Article 97. So for a positive recommendation to include this in Article 10, would the sponsors of 97 be comfortable with a take no action for 97? Do you, Madam Chair?
Let's thank you, Chris, and let's keep that in consideration. I just want to see if there's any more comments on this one as well before we jump to that, because Stephen has a question and then Joanna. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Brian, and to dovetail on Chris's comment, are these unrestricted funds, or would this $600,000 be appropriated for a borrowing authorization for this specific purpose?
So the 1.5 million that will be in Article 10 under the capital, should Article 10 pass with the $6.5 million borrowing authorization in it, that we would immediately reserve $600,000 that would be carried forward until the borrowing was effectuated to start paying it back. Much like the CPC is doing, Stephen. So whenever CPC authorizes a borrowing and town meeting authorizes a borrowing for CPC funds, every year they set aside a portion of what we've calculated the debt service to be, and they raise it. And when we go to permanently borrow it, we pay down all of that band up to that point. We would do the same thing with this.
Okay, but my question I think might be a little bit different from that. Can the borrowing be for some other purpose? For instance, to complete the construction on.
Sure. So the borrowing would be in line with the way that the purpose is written in Article 10, and we still are writing that portion of Article 10. So, we would have to clear, obviously, whatever we write in Article 10 for borrowing has to be cleared with bond counsel. So, much like the 20 million or the 5 million a couple of years ago went through multiple revisions with bond counsel to get it to the point that it got to, this would go through that same exact period of time in the next 7 to 8 days, quite frankly, in order to have it ready for you for next week.
Yeah, that's helpful, because I'd be more comfortable if it was more flexible and could be used to complete some of the projects already underway. For instance, if we can't build consensus around a particular set of parameters for the down payment assistance or equity sharing.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond very quickly.
Go ahead, Brian, please.
Thank you. We would build it with the identification of a down payment assistance program in the language, Stephen, but we would also build it to grant them not absolute unlimited flexibility, but flexibility to be able to complete some of the other projects if that were to be the case. It wouldn't be structured so rigid that it could never be used for anything at all. It would be, and again, there are a lot of gates that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has to go through to expend these types of funds. So there would be an opportunity for a lot of discussion on it as well as we go through the process.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Stephen. Tucker, did you want to, first Tucker, then Joanna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was going to briefly add to that. The finance director had asked about possible uses for the bonding of the funds, and it was outlined in possible uses that not only could it be for a down payment assistance program, but it could be used toward the further subsidy of the development of some of those other parcels that Brooke talked about. So if you look at that chart in terms of the safe harbor maintenance in the packet, you'll see there are allocations noted in further years or needs in further years. We're not asking for those needs right now, but that is the type of thing that the authorization could go to complete if for some reason the down payment assistance program ultimately did not pass muster. Thank you.
Tucker, Joanna?
So I just want to go back to, through you, Denise, Brooke, right, about the total spend of the $25 million. So I heard what you said about how it was all spent, but what I guess the part where I wanted clarification on is, it sounds like a good chunk of that, like $9 million of it, is getting paid back to you via a loan. Yes.
May I, Madam Chair?
Please, Brooke, go ahead.
Okay, so the answer to that question is yes. A significant portion of that will come back to us over a long period of time. I mean, the loan to Housing Nantucket is 50 years. So, but there will be some return on that investment for sure, some repayment of that investment. I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight is that the select board recently added to their strategic plan a new priority of workforce housing. And this equity sharing down payment assistance model is in direct response to their adding that priority to their strategic plan. And I'd like to reiterate that while we all have focused really hard on shy list management and safe harbor maintenance, a whole segment of the community has been left not taken care of in this housing crisis. And this shared equity down payment assistance model is a way to begin to address that segment of our market, of our housing crisis, as we simultaneously complete the subsidized housing inventory and safe harbor management. I'd like to throw out a number that there's currently 480 families on waiting lists for housing on Nantucket. A combination of Housing Nantucket, Habitat for Humanity, Landmark House, Academy Hill. It's a large number, and Tucker said some of our consulting may go to more accurately quantifying that number after we finish the HPP, the Housing Production Plan. So we are very, very aware of how broad and deep the need for housing is in our community for year-rounders, both rental and home ownership at all different income level restrictions. And that is what we are have been working hard to plan for. And one last thing, now that I think about it, is the original concept of the Neighborhood First program was not feasible as a method for maintaining safe harbor. It was an idea that was not practically able to be implemented, and for two reasons. One, lining up.
Brooke, I'm going to stop you there because we're not actually relitigating, if you will, that particular article on 18
Fair enough.
19. Joanna and then Jill. Thank you.
Okay, so the point that I really wanted to make was that when I first started on the finance committee, right, we specifically gave the Affordable Housing Trust several conversations we had around getting off the mark and making something happen, because they would come back and ask for money. and they had a chunk of money and nothing happened for a period of time. And when we went and did this $20 million article at the annual town meeting, they have gone out and done something. And I think that it has the potential to be very effective, and we're going to get some of the money back. And I think that this down payment assistance program is a reasonable use, and taking this loan is a reasonable use. And I think that over time, I'm just trying to, kind of try to address some of his comments, because I think that they're valid. But I think that over time, there's been a trust that has been developed. And I think that there is an approach, and these same folks have been working on this for a long time, and they have a great deal of expertise in this. And I think that we need the ability to be a little bit more flexible. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Joanna. Jill, please.
Yeah, so I guess, look, I have a very simple mind, and I just look at things very simply. And so with the money that has been spent, pretty much it boils down to Tacoma Green and Fairgrounds when it comes to, that's land and those are projects. Sorry, Tacoma Green wasn't part of the 10 million, that was before. But this is getting to my larger point. These projects are not providing any housing yet. So in a way, I kind of like the down payment assistance program, because that might help somebody buy something now. I was wondering if there's a price on that, is there a level of how much can the house cost or not cost? Is there a ceiling on that? So that's one question. But again, we're continuing to add money to things that are going to take a really long time to build. I also know from a town standpoint, the town stood up against some high density development. And now it seems the town is putting forward a lot of programs for high density development, a lot of which are in the same neighborhoods, by the way, and maybe crowding those neighborhoods. And so I do have concerns about continuing to give money to do more high density development, even though I understand you're saying that's the best way forward to meet 480 people. If I'm clear, and Anne, maybe through Denise, you can answer, I thought Housing Nantucket's list of people at 80% of AMI, there's about 180 of those people. And I know overall we have a challenge between SHI, and that's kind of your first priority, Tucker, it sounds like, that you were given to say, hey, how can we meet SHI every year? I'm sympathetic to that, because that's hard, and it's not necessarily addressing the bulk of the people on this list of 180 or 480. I understand. But I think to just keep, again, sending money for projects where there are no heads in beds, I'm having a hard time with that. And I would really love to see the trust show me there are landlords on this island that own buildings. And can we not get some deed restrictions on some existing properties? Not every property on this island is 2 acres. They're not. So I'm just wondering more about that, because for us to back the money means that we're backing whatever program you decide to do.
Thank you, Jill. First, I want to go to Stephen, because you had your hand up, and then I will ask Anne to jump in and answer Jill. So Stephen?
It was just a crosstalk comment, and I've made the point that we need specificity to plans. That's all.
So my comment and observation, Anne, before I turn it over to you, is when we started this conversation, the equity sharing was keeping houses in the year-round family, and there wasn't going to be any income restrictions, nor would they land on the SHI list. So that's how this was presented at the beginning of this discussion. Did I misunderstand that? I guess Brooke would be the answer to that question, and then over to you, Anne, to answer Jill's question.
So an equity sharing program would not generate SHI listed units. It would be in addition to the effort to maintain safe harbor and reach 10%. And the reason for that is a housing unit that is under a home ownership model has priced at 80% area median income would require a subsidy, a really huge subsidy. What this program hopes to achieve is meet the needs of people who make $1 more than the covenant program allows, that do not qualify for the covenant program, but have been here. And these are people we're losing on a regular basis from town positions and other positions in the community. People are moving off island because they can't They cannot gain access to the market with the price point and the down payment required outside of the covenant program. The down payment assistance piece of this could actually help some people on Ann's waiting list. Well, we have a shortage of supply of covenant homes to begin with, and there's folks waiting in that program who really would struggle to pull together a first-time homebuyer down payment of 10%, which is $80,000 right now. So providing some support for covenant buyers as well would be built into this. It's important to note we tried to buy individual houses, and no one came forward under the request for proposals that we put out to acquire individual homes to turn them into affordable rentals. So it was part of the plan, and we tried, and it didn't work. So
Again, we're not going back to that one. Thank you, Brooke. Anne, Jill had a question in terms of your waiting list.
Yes, thank you. My name's Ann Cuspa. I'm the Director of Housing Nantucket. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to answer the question. There are currently about 245 people who are qualified for our affordable rental program. The Covenant Homeownership Program, which is unique to the island, there's nothing else like it in the United States, to my knowledge. There are 48 qualified households actively looking, and then another, say total 120 households who have let their qualification expire because at the current time there are 0 covenant homes for sale. There are 3 very small pieces of land that are dear. And so this sort of funding would be very helpful to meet the need. And we have a program in place that would put a permanent year-round deed restriction on it, on the property once it was purchased. So I think the 20 million appropriation, even though it wasn't completely defined, it was very effective at managing the shy list. So if we could build, I liked that suggestion about the putting it into the article's language to serve this income bracket who very much doesn't have many options. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Finance Committee, any other comments on this? Because this is part of next week's deliberations on Article 10 and Article 8. So it's just to get an understanding of it before we talked about the next articles. Any other comments? I did have one other question. Joe, as a member of Habitat, so the Affordable Housing Trust pays maintenance to Habitat houses? You're on the Habitat board, is that correct?
Thank you, Denise. No, that was, this goes back earlier in the conversation. The Affordable Housing Trust has provided Habitat with construction and land acquisition funding. But once a family is selected and is, we have a closing, they take possession of the home. Maintenance is the responsibility of the homeowner, not the Affordable Housing Trust or Habitat Nantucket. I think that was really the only thing I wanted to clarify. I think Tucker had made that comment in terms of the use of the maintenance funds in their proposed budget.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Tucker, I can call you again, but Tucker, you have your hand up.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just I think I mentioned before, this is a new program. It is something that came up during the course of the CPC process this fall, where the Housing Authority, for instance, struggles with funds in order to maintain its rental units, which serve the very low income here. So this is a program we would like to establish to be able to assist organizations where maintenance is a challenge. I did want to comment as well, just on something that was noted, I think maybe it was in Jill's comments about high density. I mean, one of the tenets of the deployment of the $25 million has been to do projects that are within local zoning. And that is the case in every situation. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Tucker. Okay. So Brian, Mr. Turbot, I'm going to leap to Article 23, Appropriation, Housing Trust Fund 475K. And I think you asked us a little while ago, say motion not to adopt. Was that the request from?
That's correct, Madam Chair, because we intend to fund the 475 through Article 8 and Article 10.
Okay, thank you. So may I have a motion from the, and before I do that, any comments or questions from the Finance Committee in respect of that motion? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion.
Motion.
Chair,
Thank you. And
He has a
Joanne and
question.
Peter Schaefer. Oh, who has a question? I'm sorry.
Chris does.
Thank
yeah,
you.
I was just trying to get a question in about the totality of Article 10, Brian, the scale, the whole thing.
Scale in terms of the dollar amount that will be in Article 10?
Yeah, there are other items in Article 10, correct?
That's correct.
And so what's the totality of Article 10? I'm trying to get a sense of how big a component of Article 10 the ask is going to be relative to the housing.
Sure. Let me, if you could give me 1 second, Chris, while I look it up for you, I will be happy to answer that.
And it relates to the conversation on this article, if it's being done, Madam Chair, if it's being done through 10 in lieu of here, that's why I've asked the question.
Actually, Article 23 is not through 10. Article 23 is through the operating budget, Article 8, Chris. So the
Oh,
one.
okay, fair enough, then we can hold my question till later. Sorry about that, my mistake.
Oh, it's okay. It's Brian will look it up. We can vote on the motion. We can make our motion on the motion, and then we can come back to your question once we've done that. Thank you, Chris. So the motion is motion not to adopt on Article 23, the appropriation affordable housing trust fund, 475,000, and it was motioned and seconded. So by roll call, Peter Schaefer. I couldn't hear you. You were muted, Peter.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Joanna?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Stephen? Also muted, but I saw your lips move.
Aye.
Peter McEachern?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And I got you, Jill, right? Just making sure. Okay, Denise, aye. That motion not to adopt passes unanimously. Okay. Brian, do you have the answer for Chris?
I do. There's $23 million in the capital article, inclusive of the 6.5 million.
Thank you.
Borrowing.
The borrowing, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Article 24 is the appropriation affordable housing trust fund, 7.5 million. And Brian, I'm going to put it over to you.
So Article 24 is proposed as a standalone $7.5 million borrowing article. It is contingent on a debt exclusion. And I will actually, Madam Chair, turn this over to Tucker because this is this was discussed and actually asked for at a higher amount. It was decided that we would split this into more than one request, but it is for the continuation of safe harbor, continuation of the safe harbor program. And Tucker has the details, and he will take you through what that $7.5 million would be used for, or is anticipated to be used for, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Tucker, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Brian. Simply put, this is the anticipated subsidy requirement for the development at 135 and 137 Orange Street, which, as Brooke Moore noted, is our next planned new period of safe harbor following the upcoming planned period. The reason that subsidy is required there is really sort of twofold. One is it's our approach at the trust that we like to see developments of mixed income level, and there and that actually gets a little bit to something that Jill had brought up earlier. The idea would be that this would be serving a multitude of income levels, much as Six Fairgrounds is designed to serve everywhere from 30 to 60 to 120% to market rate, actually, in that particular case. There is an opportunity. This is a site at 135, 137 Orange that could accommodate up to 32 units. We're looking at it perhaps more in the 24 type of range. As we all know, that is a year of safe harbor here. And there theoretically is a possibility to seek tax credits at a site like Orange Street at a scale like 24 units. But there are a couple of challenges with that in terms of relying on it for safe harbor. Number one is the tax credit program is a very competitive program. And Six Fairgrounds, as we know, has been in the hunt for an award for 4 years at this point. We're cautiously optimistic it might get an award in this current round. If Nantucket gets an award, it may, we may have to go through a cooling off period for a number of years because these funds are so sought after. And as well, because it is the actual award of the tax credit that determines the point at which the units are eligible towards certification or safe harbor, that date of award is not a set calendar date in a given year, and it could fluctuate anywhere from April until August, and that may or may not end up syncing with when we would like to have our next period of safe harbor commence. As well, if you take on tax credit dollars, you are not going to get an award unless you have 20 or more units which are tax credit eligible, meaning that they must be in effect restricted at 60% area median income or less. And as I stated at the start of these comments, we think rather than have a monolithic income level served, it would be more desirable in a host of respects to be able to serve needs at a variety of levels. So those monies are anticipated based on input from consultant Kevin McGuire, who was heavily involved with the Satcham's Path project here, knows the affordable housing world well in Massachusetts, but the anticipated subsidy that would be required to make that project financially viable. Again, it would not ultimately be spent if it were not needed, or perhaps only a portion of it might ultimately be needed. We won't know until we issue RFPs and issue an RFP and receive a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. Jill, you had your hand up at the start of the discussion of this article.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to my issue about asking about existing properties and deed restrictions, Tucker, but what if the public doesn't approve this plan? I mean, what if they don't approve Orange Street this year at the ballot and UMass and the old fire station? What if they don't approve those things? Do you have, I know this is your job and it's hard. I know that it's very complicated. You guys have lended me a lot of information. I'm really appreciative to understand it more. And I'm sure I've only scratched the surface, but is there a backup plan for, again, maybe seeing a landlord that's here and going to him and saying, do you have, or her, and do you have 22 units, 24 units that we can deed restrict now? Is there any sort of backup plan here for that in case the voters decide this project is maybe something they want to hold off on until we see the fruition of Tacoma Green and Fairgrounds, which I feel like those are really moving forward.
Tucker, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm somewhat reminded of when I first got involved with this and went before the select board at the time. just looking for $1 million, just saying, hey, we need something to get started. And I recall Mr. DaCosta, who was the chair of the board, saying, we might as well vote on this now. I'm against it. And so I said, well, it's awfully hard to pull a rabbit out of a hat without even a hat. And to his credit, he did a 180 and he said, we'll give you the $1 million. Just tell us, how you're going to spend it before you spend it. So I can't make promises if we don't have funding required to do what we're saying we need to do. So I don't know that I have a great answer for you, Jill. I'm hoping that this community, which has been very supportive of housing efforts in recent years, as Mr. Maury was noting, will continue to show that support at town meeting this year.
Thank you, Tucker. Further questions and comments? Finance Committee? Okay, so here goes the complexity of what we're trying to discuss today. So what I would like to do is not make a motion now, but get an idea of what the motion might be. Because all of these things are actually concatenated together. So Article 38, 97, 24, and then 8 and 10 next week. So I don't want to put off all the motions till next week, unless it seems that we must do so. But at the same time, I'd like to see what Finance Committee is thinking about this particular article, thumbs up, thumbs down. And then we'll go on to the discussion of Article 38, and then we'll go on to the discussion of Article 97. So if one was to propose a motion and not be seconding it, Chris, what would you propose?
I guess from where I sit, this is one of the less interconnected and less complex ones, and I think there would probably be a positive motion that I would support.
Okay, thank you. And nodding of heads. I see one thumb up. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, thank you. All right, let's go on to Article 38, please. So with Article 38, what are the questions that the Finance Committee has in respect of this? Because I see Arthur is with us, and so is my dog barking when I say Arthur. So no offense, Arthur, but my dog seems to really like your name. Any questions for Arthur or actually Brian on this particular article? Jill?
I didn't have my hand up, but I'm happy to ask questions as usual.
Jill, you're my go-to person for questions, so I always like to start with you.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, one thing, Denise, and maybe Brian can ask this if I can ask him through you, or maybe you can. What would really help in all this for me, and this is related to Article 38. It would really help if it was broken down about which funding source is coming from where. Because I was really surprised today by that spreadsheet. I've worked all day. I didn't see that spreadsheet that got sent to me this morning or something. And I never saw it till I sat down. It would help me if I could just understand that a little bit more, how much is being spent on affordable housing and from where. So that's a big statement. And then my question really for Mr. Reed is, would you be open to this article being put forward maybe next year or amended so it wouldn't start for a year from now, and maybe at a reduced percentage of the tax? And some of that is because I think we probably don't know how much we are going to get in the lodging tax yet. We haven't had a normal year yet, so I know that's a concern for the finance department.
Thank you, Jill. Brian, did you want to? I've been doing a quick back of the envelope, and if it's 6.5 with borrowing on the Article 10 and 7.5 on the appropriation also, and then there'll be $1 million left over in Article 10 of the 600, 1625, 600 toward the, reserved for the borrowing, then that leaves $1 million left over. We're looking at 14 million and change with the 375 going into Article 8. So I remember Brooke saying 2 meetings ago, or the last time we discussed that they wanted 4-5 million a year. Well, that's 3 years worth right there, excluding Articles 38 and 97. That's what That's what my scratching on the back of my envelope says.
14.5 million?
About 14.5 million. On just what we've talked about so far. Brian, I'll have you correct me. Pardon?
I'm
Stephen?
just going to say also excluding the transfer tax bill, which is still moving.
Yeah,
into
I
the-
said, yeah, exclude, oh, yeah, you mean the housing bank bill?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so three things. Yeah.
So, Brian, sorry.
Yeah, I get slightly more than that. I think it's closer, it's right around 15 million, give or take, which would we fully allocated if all of this were to pass. But it is, again, some of it is done in a way that gives the Affordable Housing Trust the flexibility to be able to do things. And, I just want to, as we talk about the 7.5 million and everything, a lot of this is done with the expectation that the Affordable Housing Trust is always, in all of my conversations with them, said we don't have the flexibility or the mechanisms to be able to do things when they arise, or to be able to, if something happens, to be able to consider it. So every approach that we've taken this year is trying to find ways to give them that. And so, but you are right, Madam Chair, it's a little over 15 million by the time it's all done.
And that is excluding any potential money from Articles 38 or 97.
That does not include any calculations or provisions made for Articles 38 or 97. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Jill?
Which is, and this has been really, I think, pretty hard to get to where we are. I know I'm sure it's been hard on all of you to do it this way. I feel like, just like Stephen said, none of this existed 2 weeks ago, and we're changing this and that. One of the things that's nice about Arthur's article is that I think it is a more steady, source of revenue, which we'll know more probably in future COVID years. That's all.
I'm hoping you meant future COVID-free years, Jill, but that's okay.
I don't think it's going away, Denise, but living with COVID years, I guess.
Any other questions, comments from Finance Committee? And Arthur, I see your thumb raised, and I'll get to you in a second. I just want to make sure FinCom has had their questions proposed. Okay. I'm starting to look like a dog in the back of the car with my head checking the screen. Arthur? You're muted, Arthur. You're muted. Arthur, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Arthur, still can't hear you. No, he's gone. No, we really can't hear him. Peter McEachern, while we're waiting for Arthur to come back.
Arthur's gone off and he'll come back on.
Thank you. Moment of contemplation brought to you by Arthur Reed. I'm loath to jump ahead to 97, but maybe we should because I'm starting to look at time here.
We're admitting we just admitted him, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
All right, thank you. Then I will wait. Thank you, Brian. Isn't
He's
this
in, but I don't know if we can hear him.
Thumb up again.
he's not on my screen until he says something. Arthur, there you are.
I hope you can hear me now. For some reason, I've been having this problem. Can you hear me?
We can, Arthur, thank you.
If I come into a meeting and have been muted and then unmute, nobody can hear me. I have to leave the meeting, come back on, I don't know if this is because I'm so technologically incompetent or what the story is, but this is what happens to me all the time, and my apologies to everyone.
We had a moment.
I believe I said at the last meeting, when the issue was raised of the fact that the 2022 town budget would be knocked askew if this article were to pass, because I had it set up to commence in 2022, fiscal 2022, that I would be perfectly amenable to having it start in the following year. The problem is, of course, that there's always going to be a year's lead time, because nobody is going to know when they're doing the budget whether this thing is going to pass or not. So I think that if we amended the thing to start in 2023, that would accomplish what I'm trying to do. Whereas submitting it again next year would run potentially into the same problem, or there would be another year that would have to be gone through before it would be able to start. So yes, I'm amenable to that, and would ideally like to see a finance committee motion recommending the article with a 2023 rather than 2022 start year. And as to the percentage of it, yeah, the 2/3 that I put in there was off the top of my head. There's no great magic to it one way or another. Who knows what the amount of money available is going to be, as commented, when we get back into some semblance of normalcy, or at least a predictable stream as to what the amount of revenue that would come from the occupancy tax would be. But I think that 2/3 is a reasonable amount, but I'd be amenable to any other suggestions as to what the fraction would be. Obviously, we don't know exactly what amount of money 2/3 is going to generate, and that may need to be adjusted in future years. Of course, once it does pass, it is locked in for a 3-year period.
Thank you, Arthur. Questions for the Finance Committee? Stephen?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Brian, in the event that this passes and we have this stabilization fund set up and it's being funded, my understanding is that we need a 2/3 majority vote at town meeting to take any money out.
That is correct.
So this money that requires that 2/3 vote is, it's locked up. If for some reason we can't reach that 2/3 majority, it can't be spent. We have projects presumably that need to move forward and need to be funded. So we would, I imagine, need some sort of companion article with an alternate funding source for all of these projects. Is that foreseeable, or is there some other structure that would make it easier to deal with?
So to answer your first question, it would require a 2/3 vote at a town meeting to be able to withdraw the money from this fund. I don't know a scenario that we could have a companion article to fund it some other way, because the money that would be used to be funding it would be put into the stabilization fund. So I don't know of another funding source that would be available in the event we couldn't reach a 2/3 majority at a town meeting. I think that the other way to accomplish this is really the way that the town administration has proposed doing this from this point forward. This isn't just a 1-year proposal for the $2 million, okay? The other thing that should be noted, which I've just said in the January meeting to presentation to the select board, to date, we've received $7.1 million in short-term rental tax, okay? The $2 million that we're proposing right now is 28% of what the amount that we've collected to date is, okay? I do not expect that the next 2 payments, which will be in March and June, will be very, very high in terms of the amount that we collect, because they historically have never been very much. Even delaying this for 1 year will have the impact of the town not being able to fund anything for the Affordable Housing Trust in the next budget cycle, because that money that we would have been raising and appropriating through the budget, okay, and admittedly, we're going to raise local estimated receipts to fund the majority of this money that we're proposing in the $2 million, okay? When local estimated receipts is made up The majority of it is made up from essentially 3 locations: excise tax, rooms tax, meals tax, and building permits. Okay. So if this were to pass at town meeting with a delayed implementation to not start until July 1st, 2023, the budget presentation that I would recommend to the town manager for fiscal 23 would include no funding for Affordable Housing Trust, because we would have no mechanism or dollars to be able to do that without seriously impacting the general fund budget in 23. The proposal that we've put forth for the $2 million is putting it directly into the budget and funding it just like everything else that the town currently funds. So in my mind, to answer your question, Stephen, the best way to do it is to put it into the budget like we've done.
Thank you, Brian. Jill?
I just want to make the point that 2 weeks ago, you didn't have the $2 million, Brian. Please stop making it sound like you've really planned for them forever. What I like about this plan is that this is an ongoing source of funding. Does it have a lot of checks and balances? It does. Is that ideal for Brook and Tucker? It's not, but it is something. And it does allow you to plan because you know what the percentage will be. You probably can take a guess how much money that's going to be. So I'm sorry if I disagree with you about that. That's why I propose maybe it should be going forward. Maybe it should get have a later start date to help you plan for that. But there was no money in the budget for Brook and Tucker this year until 2 weeks ago, except for the things that were pre-authorized in recent years.
Chris? Thank you, Jill. Chris?
So, Madam Chair, I would disagree with that. I think I would agree with Brian that I appreciate very much the spirit with which this article was brought forward. I think the work the town has done to mitigate it through Article 10 does that. And I don't see how I would be supportive of this unless maybe at a much lower percentage, 10 or 20%. And also, as I understand it, after 3 years, I think you can vote to close the stabilization fund, but I wouldn't support it unless we had an automatic reset. I don't know if that's possible. But I think with the housing bank fund, after 10 years, it sunsets. If this had a automatic sunset provision after maybe 5 years, then I could maybe wrap my hands around it. But it's just an ongoing open-ended thing at this percentage level relative to the plan that Brian and the town came up with. I don't see it.
Thank you, Chris. Other comments? From my perspective, I look at it a little bit simpler possibly, which is money in the budget can be spent when it can be spent. And there's no restrictions to when you need to spend it, and you don't have to go to town meeting. And so there's no delay and there's no risk of not being able to spend it. So I don't love the stabilization fund element of this. I think that just puts restrictions on the money that are, one of the things we've heard consistently in this meeting is flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. And the stabilization fund is an antithesis to flexibility. So from that perspective, I don't care for it, and feel that it isn't the most, dare I say it, flexible solution to the problem. So in the spirit of what we were doing before, any other questions on this? And is there a potential motion that will not get seconded yet because we want to discuss 97 before we make motions on numbers 24, 38, and 97?
My hypothetical motion is not to adopt.
Okay, I'm seeing nodding of heads. Okay, let's move on to 97 then. Thank you. Peter McEachern?
Madam Chair, I have to recuse myself from discussing anything on Article 97. I'm on a board that receives funds from the land bank.
Thank you, Peter McEachern. You are now private citizen Peter McEachern. Okay, thank you. All right, 97. Now, oh, Brian disappeared on me. Brian, please come back. All's forgiven.
I'm here, Madam Chair, sorry.
I believe that, so I had sent an email to Jesse and Eric to ask them to break down the next 5 years of their financials to enlighten our discussion. I saw that we got that today at 2 o'clock. I did not see it until just before this meeting. I was on another meeting. So Brian, I believe Jesse also sent it to you. So if you can screen share that, and then I would ask either Jesse or Eric to walk us through the numbers in respect of what the forward looking is on their on the proposal of the 25%. And while you're doing that, I will share that I've got probably well over 120, 130 emails in respect of this article. We did not put them in the packet because of the sheer volume of emails. And of those 130, and there was 3 for this article and 120 plus against it. So just so everyone knows, that's the emails that I got. And I answered with them all. So there you go. Okay. Brian's still looking.
I am, Madam Chair. I have to find it on my desktop. 1 second.
Okay.
Whoa.
That's my dog helping me look.
Oh, that's excellent. Unfortunately, oh, right here, I think, I hope. No.
Yeah, that's it,
Oh,
right?
Was it?
I think so. I don't dare come out of my screen because I'm afraid I'll lose
Is
everything.
that it? Can people see that?
Can you make it a little bit bigger for
I
people
can, yes.
who are blind? There we go.
Is that better?
That's much better. And
Okay.
so, Eric, actually, I will ask you to talk us through what we have in front of us here, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Sorry, there's a bit of an echo. We received a request to provide a look forward. We had provided a looking back of 10 years with a 10-year average previously, and then received a request yesterday to provide a projection 5 years looking forward. And I don't think it really changed anything. The article proposes to divert 25% of our transfer revenue, and no matter how you slice it, that's going to have a major impact on our ability to do the things we do. I think the bottom line is, short of cutting personnel, cutting expenses, cutting capital projects, again, the things that we do, most of the money will have to come out of our acquisition. And that's the point we tried to make at the last meeting. And again, with this projected 5-year looking forward, where highlighted in yellow is the 5-year average, where you see after operations and expenses without the 25 million, the $5 million, the 25% taken out before taking out the 25%, we'd have 11 million left over on average for acquisition. And with the Article 97 effect of the 25% taken out, that acquisition fund would be reduced to 6.6 million, not quite 50%. Looking back, the 10-year average, it had more of a 50% impact on our acquisition funds. And I think I'd be happy to answer any questions about this.
So Finance Committee, if you have questions, you're going to have to hit the raise hand button, because with this on the screen, I can't see any of you except for George and Peter McEachern, who's recused.
Would you
So
like me to unshare, Madam Chair?
yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from the Finance Committee? Okay. No questions. So do I have a hypothetical motion from the Finance Committee based on the no questions? Brooke, actually, it's not a public hearing. So as I said, yeah, thank you. I mean, you made your case quite eloquently the last time we spoke about it. So unless you have an additional piece of information that's new, and it better be new, Brooke, then I would keep you on mute. So if you have something new to say, go ahead.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Brooke.
That's the first time I've seen that document. And I guess if the committee members don't have any questions, I would appreciate an opportunity to review and respond to that document if I could have that, please.
I'm not sure, Brooke. We'll think about that. Thank you. So, Chris,
I would,
you're frozen. Jill, you can talk while Chris
Oh,
is frozen.
can you hear me now?
No, Chris is
thought.
frozen. Go ahead, Chris.
I would make a motion not to adopt.
Okay, that's your hypothetical motion. Thank you. Jill, you have a question?
I just wanted to make a point to our group that I think this is a very creative article and interesting, but it's hard for me to support it right now because A, I think you do have some movement on the housing bank bill. And B, it would be, I think it's not fair it's like we're having a referendum on housing and we're having a referendum on the land bank. And this isn't really been the forum for, should the land bank have as much money as it does? I mean, I think they're elected leaders there who decide that, and the people that vote for them, that they are the ones who are the best stewards of how they spend their money. We don't have purview over that. We do have purview over their loan, and that's a little bit different. So I just wanted to make that's where I am and why I can't support it as is. And I'm sorry about that, Brooke, because you worked really hard on it, I know.
Thank you, Jill. Peter Schaefer? You're muted, Peter. Muted.
Does anybody know if the courts have overturned the Land Bank Act for anybody else?
Brooke, do you know the answer to that?
So as far as I know, there are two land banks in Massachusetts, one on Martha's Vineyard and one on Nantucket. Nantucket has gone 11 times for amendments to its enabling legislation since its initial adoption. And it's never come back in a form different from how it was sent to the State House.
I'm sorry, you have to be, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that answer. So they went to the State House and said, I want X, and it came back and said, you can have X, or they came back and said, nope, you can't have X. Nice try.
11 times Nantucket has sent requested changes to the land bank enabling legislation since it was originally adopted. In other words, we've had to revise the enabling legislation through the State House 11 times since its initial adoption. And it is the request that Nantucket has made for changes, which the largest of which was to enable it to own and manage a golf course, went as requested, was passed by the legislature as requested. So it has never been, I believe through you, Madam Chair, that Mr. Schaefer may be asking, is there a risk to reopening the legislation at the State House? That's not your question. Okay, then I misunderstood it. Okay. So as far as I know, none have been overturned.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Eric, you've disappeared off my screen, but when I ask you to talk, you'll reappear, I'm sure, or Jesse, either one. Oh, there's Eric. You're back up in the corner. What Brooke said, I'm assuming that the 11 requests that went to the State House for amendments were amendments broadly in line with the charter of the land bank, and not something where I want to change it completely and move money to affordable housing. I think that's a different. So I'm just looking for confirmation that the 11 were more tweaking, if you will, or was it really turning it on its head in terms of what it was originally started to be? I didn't ask that very well, but hopefully you understood where I was going. Go ahead, Eric. I was calling on you particularly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're correct. There's been numerous minor amendments to the language. Brooke is correct. Probably the largest one was the golf course amendment to allow for the operation of the golf course. Our act had recreation as a component, but the operation of the golf course was deemed to need to be an amendment. But otherwise, they've been very minor tweaks. One was to allow for a higher M exemption amount, which is first-time home buyer exemption. So, and various other minor amendments.
Thank you, Eric. Finance Committee. So I think I already have a hypothetical on this, and I'm going to go back, actually, my dog, I'm sorry. She wants to vote, obviously. Back to Article 24. And my question to Finance Committee, and you can just do thumbs up or thumbs down. Do we have enough information from what's been presented and what we understand to make motions on 24, 38, and 97 today? Do this, 24, yes or no? I only see one thumb up, 2 thumbs up, 3, 4, okay. All right, Jill, you don't have enough information on 24 to make a motion today?
No, I can.
Okay, thank you. All right, 38. We have enough to, I see thumbs up on 38. Okay, thank you. 97. Do I see thumbs up on 97, or do you want to, I see 1, 2, 3. So Peter Schaefer, Joanna, you're not ready to make motions on 97 today? Well, Peter Schaefer is, so Joanna, you're not. Joanna, I can't hear you.
If I'm the only one, don't hold it back.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Brooke, to your comment, I will address your comment that you just saw this spreadsheet today. And of course, you know, knowing your enthusiasm and your ability to communicate, you are more than able to take a look at that spreadsheet and, you know, put it out on the newspaper and bring it to town meeting and. So, you know, looking around to my Finance Committee members is, you know, whilst we're not to say we don't value your opinion, Brooke, but I think we have enough information. So I don't want to dismiss what you've asked me, but at the same time, I think we will move forward with making motions. So thank you, Brooke. Okay, 2 thumbs up for Brooke. Okay, back to 24. The hypothetical motion that was in place before we moved on was a motion to adopt. Is that, if that is the motion, can someone make it and second it, or?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, by roll call, Peter McEachern,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joe, oh, Joe, you can't. Joanna,
Aye.
Peter Schaefer,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Denise, I, that passes unanimous. I can never say unanimously. Okay, Article 38. Our hypothetical motion a few minutes ago was motion not to adopt. Is that still the motion? And if so, will someone make it, please?
Motion not to adopt.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussions on the motion? Okay, by roll call, Peter Schaefer,
So aye.
okay, Stephen Morey.
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jill,
No.
thank you. Peter McEachern,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Denise, I. The vote is X number to 1. I didn't count, so I guess it's 7 to 1. Okay, and then Article 97.
Motion to not adopt.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, thank you. Starting with Peter Schaefer,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Peter Schaefer. Oh, yeah, Peter Schaefer's off. Okay, Denise, I. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, everyone. We are now We have review and discussion of other articles in the annual town meeting, but as usual, we have them scheduled, so I don't see FinCom raising their hand on any other articles. So with that, our date of our next meeting will be Thursday, March 25th at 4 p.m. Thank you, everyone who participated. Thank you for answering our questions so effectively. It was very helpful, and we're very appreciative of everyone who comes here and contributes. It makes a significant difference to the quality of our discussion, and it's very much appreciated. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn? Look at that, I remembered for the first time in weeks.
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Thank you. Roll call. Peter Schaefer,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Jill,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Peter McEachern,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Joe, you can actually adjourn. You can come back for that.
Aye.
Thank you, Denise. Aye. Thank you, everyone. Libby, Brian, and Rick, thank you as always. Thank you very much.
I'm going to adjourn too.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
I'm not staying.